It happened on Christmas Eve. I sat across the dinner table, heart fluttering with that naive flicker of hope, thinking this year might be different. My sister, Rachel, was glowing. Our parents never looked at me the way they looked at her. Then came the gifts. She got a house. I got a keychain. It read, "Try harder." They laughed like it was a joke. I smiled like it didn't break me. But something shifted that night. This time I didn't just walk away. I began to watch, to listen and to remember. They thought they broke me. They just awakened me. Christmas Eve always had a certain magic to it, until that year. The house was glowing with lights wrapped around the porch railings like golden ivy. Inside, the chandelier sparkled like crystal icicles. Cinnamon and roasted turkey wafted through the air, mingling with the quiet hum of a jazz quartet my mother insisted on playing every year. It looked like a perfect holiday postcard, until you looked close enough. I arrived 5 minutes early, because I always did. That's what good daughters do. I brought a bottle of wine, one I knew my father liked, and wore the emerald dress my mother once said complimented my eyes. When I stepped in, my father greeted me with a distracted nod. My mother smiled thinly and kissed the air beside my cheek, already turning away as she complimented the caterer on the placement of the shrimp cocktail. "Oh, look who's here," my aunt called out. "Jessica, our success story." I smiled. That old label again, our success story. It sounded more like a consolation prize than admiration. I was the first to go to college, the one with the stable career. I owned my apartment, paid my own bills, never asked for help. But no one really saw me. I was the background to Rachel's spotlight. Rachel, of course, arrived fashionably late in a cloud of Chanel and giggles. She kissed everyone loudly, clinking her heels across the marble floor. My mother's eyes lit up as she rushed to greet her. "There's my baby," she said, hugging her as if she hadn't seen her in years, though they had brunch together every weekend. My father took her coat, beaming. "You look beautiful, Rach." Rachel tossed her hair and gave me a sideways grin. "Jess, that's a cute dress. Vintage?" "Still fits," I replied, keeping my tone light. Dinner was elaborate, as always. 7 courses, curated wines, a sculpted ice swan centerpiece. I mostly stayed quiet, letting the laughter and chatter swirl around me like snowflakes I couldn't catch. Every story led back to Rachel, her latest art show, her recent trip to Tulum, her podcast episode with some influencer I'd never heard of. Jessica's firm just promoted her to senior consultant, my aunt mentioned at one point. "Oh, that's nice," my mother said, her eyes already shifting back to Rachel. "Anyway, Rach, tell us about the gallery opening." By dessert, my cheeks hurt from polite smiling. The moment came as coffee was served, gift exchange. It was a family tradition. One by one, we handed out small wrapped boxes and exchanged hugs and thank yous. Then my father clinked his spoon against his glass. "Before we wrap up, your mother and I have something special, a little Christmas surprise." My heart fluttered. Maybe this year they'd recognize me, maybe something symbolic, a letter, a watch, something passed down. They handed Rachel a white box tied with red velvet ribbon. She squealed before opening it, unfolding a piece of heavy stock paper. Her eyes widened. Her mouth dropped open. "No way!" she gasped. Everyone leaned in as she read aloud. "This document certifies the transfer of ownership of property located at 1746 Maplewood Drive." A house. My parents gave my sister a house. Laughter erupted. Claps, cheers. Someone popped open another bottle of champagne. "We just thought she could use a space to grow her art," my mother said, wiping away a proud tear. "She's been doing so well. And that garden," my father added, "perfect for her yoga." I didn't know whether to clap or cry. I sat frozen as Rachel hugged them both, then turned to me with mock sympathy. "Don't worry, Jess," she said. "I'm sure your gift is thoughtful too." My mother handed me a small flat box, blue wrapping, a silver ribbon. I opened it slowly. Inside was a keychain, stainless steel, engraved with 2 words, "Try harder." There was a beat of silence. Then Rachel snorted. My father chuckled. Someone coughed awkwardly. I felt every eye turn away. Not one met mine. I wanted to say something, anything, but the words caught in my throat like thorns. So I smiled, tight, mechanical. "Thank you," I said. Rachel leaned over and whispered, "Maybe next year." I don't remember much after that. Just that I stood by the window while everyone else laughed and sipped coffee, watching the snow drift lazily outside. I clenched the keychain in my fist until it left a red mark on my palm. No one followed me when I said I needed some air and stepped out. That night, something in me cracked. It wasn't the unfairness. I'd grown up with that. It wasn't the humiliation either. It was the realization that they never intended to see me. Not then, not ever. But they would, not tonight, not tomorrow. But someday, they'd remember the moment they handed me that keychain. Because that was the moment I decided I wasn't playing the quiet daughter anymore. The day after Christmas, I called my parents. It was early, before coffee, before I had the strength to pretend again. The phone rang 3 times before my mother answered, her voice bright and brittle. "Jessica?" "Why?" I asked. No preamble, no pleasantries, just the question that had haunted me all night. "Why did you give Rachel a house and give me that?" There was a pause. Then came her answer, as polished and sharp as ever. "Jessica, you always overthink things. Maybe you should focus on why you didn't get what you wanted, instead of blaming us." "I'm not blaming," I said, though my voice was tight. "I'm asking. Doesn't it seem a little obvious?" Another pause, then a sigh. "Look, you've always been difficult, competitive. Rachel knows how to bring people together. You should reflect on that." The line went dead a second later. No goodbye. Over the next few days, the silence deepened. No texts, no photos from the dinner, no invitations to the next family brunch. When I reached out to my aunt, she responded vaguely, "I think it's best you give things space. There's been talk." Talk? I found out what that meant soon enough. A colleague forwarded me a screenshot from a Facebook group where extended relatives shared holiday photos. One image showed Rachel standing in front of her new house, arms wide, champagne in hand. The caption read, "Hard work pays off. Some of us get houses, some get life lessons." The comments stung more than the photo. She's always been jealous of Rachel. She never knew how to be part of the family. I heard she caused a scene at Christmas. Typical. The worst part wasn't what they said. It was how easily they believed it. No one asked for my side. Rachel's live stream made it worse. I watched it in full. 45 minutes of her walking through her new home, giggling at furniture, opening drawers, panning over the backyard. Then she turned the camera to herself and said, "You know, it's funny. Some people get upset when others succeed. Like, not everyone can handle seeing their younger sister do well. Some people think getting a keychain means the world's against them. But maybe it just means they need to try harder." She winked at the camera. I closed the video. My hands were shaking. Later that night, I scrolled aimlessly through my inbox, trying to forget the noise. That's when I saw the message. Subject, "I know what they did." No sender name, just a single line of text. "I know the truth about your family. Meet me if you want answers." There was an address, a coffee shop I vaguely remembered near my high school. Against better judgment, I went. She was already there when I arrived. Slender, dark curls, oversized sunglasses. She stood as I approached. "You don't remember me," she said, "but I remember you. I'm Madison. I went to school with Rachel. We were close, until we weren't." I stared, unsure. "She told me stories about you, said you were controlling, obsessed with being perfect, but it didn't add up, not when I saw how she spoke about you behind your back. I started noticing things." She pulled out her phone and tapped a few times, then placed it on the table. A recording began to play. "Jessica was never the daughter I wanted. She's too rigid, too cold. Rachel, now she understands people. She listens. She makes you feel seen." It was my mother's voice, clear, crisp, casual. "I told Peter it was always going to be Rachel who made us proud. Jessica was just there, a placeholder." The blood drained from my face. Madison paused the recording. "That was at a fundraiser 2 years ago. I don't think she knew I was nearby." I couldn't speak. "There's more," she added. "Rachel told me once, half drunk, that she intercepted your college scholarship letter when you were 17. You never followed up because you thought you didn't get it." I froze. "What?" "She shredded it. Said she couldn't risk you leaving town and being the better sister. That was her word. Better." I stared at the table, the words circling like vultures. That was the year I thought I failed, that I hadn't worked hard enough. I remembered crying into my pillow, blaming myself. I remembered apologizing to my parents for letting them down. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked finally. Madison shrugged. "Because I know what it feels like to be manipulated, to doubt your own memory, and because I don't like bullies who smile while they crush people." As I drove home, her words echoed in my mind, bouncing off every cracked memory I had tried to seal shut. A placeholder, never the daughter she wanted, the scholarship, the recording. My whole life had been curated, not just by favoritism, but by sabotage. For the first time, I didn't feel broken. I felt angry. And that anger had weight. It wasn't loud, not yet. It was stillness, cold, focused. They had spent years convincing me I was the problem, that I wasn't enough. Now I knew better, and I was going to show them what I'd become. I don't remember driving there. 1 minute I was at home listening to Madison's recording on repeat. The next I was gripping the steering wheel, my knuckles white, as Rachel's new house came into view. It stood like a monument, modern, pristine, smug. I didn't knock. I slammed the door open, barely noticing the music echoing from the kitchen or the scent of essential oils in the air. Rachel turned from her guests, holding a glass of wine, her expression caught between amusement and annoyance. "Jess," she said, stepping forward, "what are you—" "Did you think I wouldn't find out?" I snapped, my voice louder than I intended. "The scholarship, the letter, you stole it." Gasps rippled through the room. Phones came out. Someone hit record. Rachel's smile didn't falter. She sipped her wine and tilted her head. "I have no idea what you're talking about." "Bullshit," I hissed. "You lied. You let me believe I failed. You let them think I wasn't good enough, just so you could shine." A murmur from the back. "This is getting uncomfortable." Rachel gave the crowd a rueful look. "My sister's going through something. She's always had trouble managing stress." There it was, the performance, the same act she'd played our whole lives. The golden girl shielding herself from the unstable sister. I felt my breath shake. The rage was so big, it blocked out thought. "I'm not crazy," I said through gritted teeth. "I'm done letting you make me the villain." Rachel turned to someone near the couch. "Could you help her out? I think she needs to leave." But it was too late. Phones were up, red blinking dots. I could already hear the sound bites being born, the sister meltdown, the jealous rant, the crazy older sibling invading the party. I left before anyone touched me. By morning, the video had over 80,000 views. It was posted with the caption, "When your older sister can't handle you winning." The The comments were brutal. She needs therapy. A classic bitter sibling syndrome. Her energy is terrifying. Clients called to re-evaluate our working relationship. One project was pulled within 48 hours. Another team asked to pause communication until things stabilise. No one asked what had really happened. No one cared. I tried to explain to Alex, my boyfriend of 2 years, that this wasn't a breakdown, that I wasn't unravelling. He listened in silence. Then he said, "Jess, I can't do this." My heart dropped. "What do you mean?" "I've watched you try to make your family love you for 2 years, and no matter what they do, you just keep hoping. That's not strength, Jess. That's a wound, and it's bleeding all over us." He stood, grabbed his jacket. "I grew up with someone like your mum. I promised myself I'd never get pulled into that chaos again." He hesitated, then added, "I don't want to repeat the same mistakes she made." Then he walked out. The phrase clung to me. I don't want to repeat the same mistakes she made. I didn't cry. I just sat there, the silence around me somehow louder than before. That night, I opened my medicine cabinet, stared at the sleeping pills. The voice in my head wasn't dramatic. It was logical, cold, a whisper. They win if you keep living like this. I swallowed the pills one by one. The next thing I remember is waking up to fluorescent lights and the sound of someone crying. It was Marcy, my best friend since college. She was holding my hand like it was made of glass. "You scared the shit out of me," she whispered. "Don't ever do that again." In the days that followed, I didn't speak much, but I started writing. At first, it was just to make sense of things. Then it became something else, a ledger, a record. I wrote everything I remembered, every comment, every birthday Rachel ruined, every time my mother told me to let it go, every hollow apology. The more I wrote, the more patterns emerged. Control, gaslighting, isolation. It hadn't been one wound, it was 1,000 tiny cuts, layered over years, invisible unless you knew how to trace them. One night, I found a box tucked in the back of my closet. It was full of old journals from when I was a teenager. Most pages were covered in shame. One entry stood out, dated the night of my parents' anniversary, senior year. "I think Mom hates me. She said I ruin every celebration. She was crying, but not because of me, because of Dad. I think they're going to split. She told me once I shouldn't have been born, that I was the reason they stayed together, and that was the mistake." I remembered that night. I'd repressed it. But reading the words in my own handwriting, the memory flooded back. My mother had been drunk, crying in the kitchen while my father stormed out. She pulled me aside and whispered, "You were a fix, not a choice." She'd tried to end the pregnancy. My grandmother stopped her. I was never wanted, just a tactic. The realization hollowed me, but it also clarified everything. This wasn't just favoritism. This was rejection from birth. A silent contract they never admitted out loud, but lived by every day. I looked at my journal. At the pages I'd written, I saw not just pain, but evidence. If no one would believe me when I screamed, maybe they'd listen when I wrote. This wasn't the end. It was the beginning of the reckoning. I used to believe I was broken, that something inside me was inherently flawed, unworthy, unwanted. But as I read back over the pages of my journal, the timelines, the patterns, the manipulation, it all began to snap into place. This wasn't my failing. It was a system, a structure carefully crafted over decades, engineered to uphold one golden child while quietly burying the other. I wasn't the failure. I was the scapegoat. That shift was everything. For the first time in my life, I stopped asking what was wrong with me and started asking what was wrong with them. Marcy, bless her, sent me a link to an online support group, Children of Narcissistic Families. I joined hesitantly, thinking I'd scroll once and leave. But then I read a post, then another, then 20. I was always the responsible one, but they only celebrated my sister's art shows. My dad called me a drama queen for crying after my mum gave my room to my brother. I got a mug for Christmas. My brother got a car. Every story sounded like mine, just with different names and different types of keychains. I posted anonymously, told my story. Within hours, I had dozens of replies. People who said they believed me, who shared their pain, who thanked me for saying what they never could. That validation cracked something open in me, not pain, clarity, and from that clarity came rage. But this time, it wasn't wild or chaotic, it was methodical. I started digging. Bills, statements, old documents. At first, I was just trying to make sense of financial discrepancies, why certain accounts were in my name despite me never opening them. Then I found it. A bank account at Shoreline Federal Credit Union, under my name. It was receiving regular monthly deposits. I never knew it existed. When I requested the statements, my stomach turned. The money was being funneled in from a retirement account under my mother's name. She had been using my identity to hide income, tax fraud, identity theft. Years' worth. I stared at the PDFs for hours, my hands numb. I wasn't just the forgotten daughter, I was the shield, the buffer, the insurance policy. I forwarded everything to Marcy. She read in silence, then simply said, "Jess, you need a lawyer." And I got one. His name was Ethan, calm, clinical, precise. I explained everything, from the keychain to the scholarship to the financial fraud. He didn't flinch. "This isn't just emotional abuse," he said. "It's a legal case." We began documenting everything. I recorded phone calls, archived emails, captured screenshots. I learnt the language of power, not yelling or crying, but facts, receipts, documentation. But something inside me still ached to be heard, not just legally, but emotionally. So I started writing, not in my journal this time, in a public blog, anonymous, the title, "The Daughter Who Got a Keychain." The first post detailed the Christmas dinner, the house, the keychain, the silence. It ended with, "I used to think I wasn't enough. Now I know they were never meant to deserve me." It exploded. Within 3 days, it was reposted on Reddit, shared on Twitter, quoted on Tumblr. People reached out with their own stories. Siblings who were forgotten, daughters who were blamed, sons who were discarded. I wasn't alone, not anymore. The blog gained traction. I posted every week, each entry revealing more. Not names, not faces, just truth. Then one morning I received an email from a woman named Susan. She worked for a publishing house. "I read your blog. It's raw. It's necessary. We want to offer you a book deal." I stared at the screen. "Me? A book?" Susan continued. "But we'd need your real name, your real story." That was the part that made my chest tighten. If I agreed, my parents would know, Rachel would know, the entire city might know, there would be backlash, maybe worse. But if I didn't, I'd still be hidden, still anonymous, still letting them write the narrative. I shut my laptop and walked outside. The air was crisp, the kind that wakes your skin. As I looked up at the sky, I thought of my younger self, the girl crying into her pillow at 17, thinking she wasn't smart enough, the woman at 34 smiling through a keychain that sliced her dignity apart. They deserved better. So did I. That night, I emailed Susan back. "I'll do it," I wrote, "but only if I get to tell the story my way." Her reply came within minutes. "Absolutely." As I hit send, I felt something strange. Hope. Not the fragile kind that begs for love from the wrong hands, but the kind you build with your own too. It took me 2 weeks to decide. The recording had sat in a secure drive on my laptop like a loaded weapon. Ethan warned me it could ignite a legal firestorm. "Once it's public, there's no putting it back," he said. "Are you ready for what comes next?" I was. It was a dinner party 5 years ago. My mother's voice, caught on a phone Madison had left recording by accident. The room filled with clinking glasses, laughter, and then Jessica was never the star. We needed a contrast, a baseline. You need one dim light to see how bright the other shines. Someone chuckled. Then my mother added, her voice dropping conspiratorially. We needed one daughter to fail so Rachel could look like she was soaring. That was the moment. I uploaded the audio and paired it with a blog post titled "The Script I Was Given." Within hours it spread. People were horrified, not just by the cruelty but by how casual it sounded. As if manufacturing emotional hierarchy among your children was a branding decision. By the second day, the post had over 400,000 views. By the third, a national magazine picked it up. Then a podcast, then a YouTube channel that specialized in family psychology dissected the clip frame by frame. Rachel's brand began to crumble. Sponsorships pulled out. PR agencies issued apologies. One cosmetics company released a statement. We condemn emotional abuse in any form and are ending our relationship with Rachel S. Meanwhile, a quiet investigation began into my mother's finances. A whistleblower from her retirement firm recognized the false deposit structures I'd exposed. An audit was ordered. There was talk of fraud, of consequences. But the thing I didn't expect, Rachel showed up at my door. No cameras, no makeup, no smirk, just swollen eyes and shaky breath. I didn't know, she said. Not all of it. I stared at her. She reached into her bag and pulled out a folder. It's everything. Emails, contracts, the inheritance agreement. You should see it. I didn't move. She hesitated. I was the favourite, yeah. But I didn't know how deep it went, what they said, what they planned. I thought, you hated me because I succeeded. I didn't know they built me out of you. I opened the folder. Pages of legal language. An old document I'd never seen. A clause naming Rachel the sole inheritor of our parents' assets, unless she was deemed psychologically unfit. Then the assets would revert to me. The only condition? Jessica must be under institutional care. I looked up. They were going to commit me. Rachel didn't answer. She just nodded. There were tears, yes, but I couldn't tell if they came from guilt or fear. Maybe both. I'm sorry, she whispered. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I am. I didn't slam the door in her face. I didn't hug her either. I just took the folder and walked back inside. I never responded to her texts after that. Go no contact, the forums always said. It's the only way to heal. I used to think that was harsh, cruel even, but now I understood it wasn't cruelty, it was survival. Within weeks, the fracture in my family became a collapse. My father quietly moved back to his childhood town, claiming the media frenzy was too much. My mother refused interviews, denied everything, then vanished from public life entirely. One day she was giving brunch interviews, the next she was a ghost. Rachel tried to pivot, to rebrand, but the internet doesn't forget. Her so-called friends disappeared. Events dried up, invitations vanished. I stayed quiet. No interviews, no confrontations, just the truth. I watched the system that once devoured me implode on itself. No vengeance, no drama, just gravity. Then came the final message from Rachel. A simple text. I didn't ask to be their weapon. I wish we had been sisters. I stared at it for a long time, and then I deleted it, not out of hate, out of peace. I had nothing left to give her. They'd taken enough already. I walked into my new apartment, one I'd paid for with my own name, with earnings from my upcoming book. I placed the folder in a drawer, not out of sight, but no longer in reach. I poured myself tea, sat by the window and watched the sun set across the skyline. Not once did I check my phone, because for the first time in my life, no one could rewrite my story. They tried to bury me, but I wasn't the seed, I was the storm. The first copy of the book arrived on a Tuesday, a heavy matte cover, the title embossed in silver, The Daughter Who Got a Keychain. Inside, on the dedication page, I had written, "For anyone who ever believed they were unlovable because someone else said so." By the end of the month, it hit bestseller lists. I didn't know how to react at first. I'd spent years believing I had no voice, no story worth telling. Now, strangers were quoting my words back to me. Teachers assigned the book in family psychology classes. Therapists recommended it to clients. Survivors sent letters, pages soaked in vulnerability, gratitude, and pain. You helped me name something I've felt for 30 years. I didn't realize what my parents did to me was real until you wrote it down. I thought I was alone. Those letters became my oxygen. Then came the interviews. The most watched one aired on a major network. A bright studio, warm lighting, a gentle host who opened with, "Jessica Sloan, author of The Daughter Who Got a Keychain, is here with us today to talk about what it means to break generational patterns." He looked at me and smiled. "You are not the forgotten one." I swallowed hard, because part of me still braced for the dismissiveness, the eye rolls, but they never came. For the first time, the world didn't ask me to prove I mattered. It simply listened. I spoke about scapegoating, about generational trauma, about what it means when love is conditional, measured against another's success. I didn't mention my mother or sister by name. I didn't need to. The story was no longer just mine. It was a mirror for thousands. After the segment aired, my inbox flooded again. But one email stopped me cold. Subject, family tree. It was from my father's cousin, someone I hadn't spoken to since I was a teenager. The message was brief. "Jessica, I read your book. There's something you should know. Your mother, she wasn't the first woman your father loved. He was engaged once to a woman named Clara. She disappeared before their wedding. No one knew why." My heart raced. The email continued. "But recently my mother told me the truth. Clara was pregnant, and your father brought the child home after Clara died in childbirth. Your mother was furious, but they'd already married, and she agreed to raise the baby. You." I reread the words again and again. Not their child. I wasn't even their blood. Suddenly everything made sense. The detachment, the resentment, the calculated distance. I wasn't just the lesser child. I was never truly theirs to begin with. I closed the laptop and stared out the window. Then I whispered aloud, "So I was never what she wanted, because I wasn't hers to begin with." But the twist didn't hurt the way I thought it would. It clarified, and in a strange, bittersweet way, it freed me. I wasn't broken. I was misfiled, raised by people who were never equipped to love me. So I stopped asking them to. That night I stood in front of my mirror, pulled the drawer of my nightstand open, and took out the old keychain. "Try harder." I traced the letters with my thumb, and for the first time it didn't sting. It felt like armor. Because now I knew what it really meant. It wasn't a punishment, it was a prophecy. Not to try harder to be loved, but to try harder to become who I truly was, despite everything they tried to make me. I fastened the keychain onto my house keys. My house, my rules, my peace. The next day, I moved into a quiet apartment overlooking the river. No marble floors, no ice swans, just a bookshelf, a plant named George, and sun pouring in through floor-to-ceiling windows. Every morning I brewed tea, opened the windows and let the breeze carry out the last remnants of the girl who once begged for a seat at a table that never had space for her. Sometimes Rachel messaged, sometimes my father tried to call. I never replied, not because I hated them, but because healing doesn't always include reconciliation, it includes boundaries. And finally, I had some. One afternoon, I visited a local college to guest lecture on trauma narratives in memoir. A young woman raised her hand. "How did you forgive them?" she asked. I thought for a moment. "I didn't," I said, "but I forgave myself for not knowing better, for trying too long, for hoping too hard." There was silence, then nods. Afterward, she approached me privately. "Thank you," she whispered. "You made me feel real." That night, I returned home and hung the keychain on the hook beside my door. It swung gently in the evening light. Silver. Simple, strong, try harder. Finally, it meant something I could live with. Not because I had to prove my worth, but because I'd finally come home.